without further ado, I invite the first speaker of the Affirmative team to stand and deliver their speech.
That's true. Let's see.
And before we start, I will clap once at 1 minute, once at 7 minutes, and then twice at 8 minutes.
Your worst, most vulnerable, most private and emotional moments have been broadcasted to millions since the day you were born. You will never escape this. If you are upset about this, if you want to cry about it, make sure you look at the camera while you do it. A couple things to do in this speech. Firstly, some framing, then on the exploitation, and then on how this just doesn't spread good parenting at the end of this anyway. Okay, firstly on some framing. So what do these the influencers creation actually likely to look like? So I think parenting content cannot exist without the child. It is about how one parents, the experiences and day-to-day of raising a kid. Note, this means all of this debate's content must contain a child in it because it is not adulting content, it is parenting content, right? I think this looks like family channels on YouTube, like TikTok families, like any social media videos involving like a parent and a child, you know, like the Norris Nuts or something, right? I think, what does a rise look like? I think a rise looks like a surge in popularity. Like more of these videos being made, like these videos are significantly more viewed and engaged with, therefore more videos and accounts are made in this nature. I think the counterfactual here is like maybe there's still a couple of channels, like 1 or 2, but for the most part no one really engages or watches this content, and so they sort of just fade away into the background and people just don't really care about them that much, right? People just watch other content on social media. I think people just learn parenting from like family advice, from what like they felt they didn't like as a child, and lots of people just like want to do better than their parents did and therefore just improve, right? Okay, so then on the incentives of like these influencers, right? I think they probably like obviously hold some sort of regard or care for their child, right? Because your kid's a biological intent of you created it, and just like you're probably just investing in social media because you are an influencer, right? I think like how do these incentives then get corrupted? I think even if you buy that the parents in this debate's main goal is to provide for their kids, they're still likely to become money hungry and extreme, right? They're likely to slowly become more like this because they're justifying what the content's making. Yes, it's making money for their children, it's bringing in income, they think they can give them a better future, right? I think this happens in stages, right? Initially, you're an innocent parenting influencer, right? You make a couple of like silly videos occasionally, one of them goes viral, it provides the idea in your head that you can like make money here, right? I think then you just make more videos, and you just buy a better camera, you learn about algorithms, you edit videos, etc., right? I think this becomes more all-encompassing in your life, right? Eventually, maybe you just get to the stage in which you just cannot predict when something is like going to be good for the channel or going to be good for your account will happen. You just film everything, right? I think this means like it's just an all-encompassing presence in your life, right? Okay, so on exploitation, some context here, right? There are millions and millions of videos on social media, like every single day, right? In order to succeed or to get any sort of following as an influencer, you must pertain to certain metrics of social media. I think this looks like clickbait or clickbaitable videos, like interesting things stand out, being like compliant to trends, and pumping out these videos regularly enough to like pertain to the algorithm, like 6 videos a day on TikTok or like 1 every 2 days on YouTube, right? I think more exploitation occurs under this. Why is this true? 6 mechanisms here. Firstly, So you film all the time, right? The best moments, the worst moments, the vulnerable or the happy, everything. This looks like that one parenting influencer on TikTok who got caught making her child pose repeatedly for the best crying face for the thumbnail when his dog died, right? Because to make a video about how as a parent you deal with a grieving child, right? I think like this is like really harmful in the debate. I think secondly, it like influences the type of things you do with your child, right? You choose between like something the kid may be more passionate about versus like a more contentable spot, right? So like Saber Norris quitting her Olympic level surfing career because it wasn't like contentable and if the viewers just weren't watching these videos anymore. Now she just is a permanent content creator. Thirdly, young kids are quite hard to like control, right? So more extreme tactics often get used to like try and make them comply. This looks like they're just yelling at your kid, getting frustrated, criticizing them. At very extremes, this looks like actual abuse, right? I think fourthly, a lot of content creators end up like sexualizing young girls, right? There's like lots of engagement. You notice, you either subconsciously or consciously notice there's lots of engagement when your child just wears like a pretty dress, right? When she's like, does like suggestive things, right? I think that you just either like subconsciously or not subconsciously just like start doing this more. I think fifthly, you're just always, the kid's just always controlling their emotions for the camera, right? You learn to overreact for the camera. You learn to always smile and be happy because otherwise your mum will yell at you, right? I think sixth, isolation, right? Once you reach a set level of fame, you just can't go to school anymore, right? There's two things here. Like firstly, it just takes a lot of time to make all these videos. Maybe you're just homeschooled. I think secondly, like even if you do go, you just recognize you're like sort of a mini celebrity, right? So maybe if you just knows your personal life, knows you cried on the weekend because your dog died, I think that really sucks. I think seventh, and quite importantly, you just don't get paid, right? There is like no incentive or like laws like there is for child actors for like influencers' children. Like no, like that one case where like they sued their parents, right? I think this is like really big. Okay, the outcomes of this, right? It's just hard to escape. This is on two levels, physically and emotionally. Firstly, physically, this is your home and your workplace. They are inseparable. This work provides a roof over your head, food, stability, family. And then on an emotional level, right? You're often just born into this environment, raised with the ideas. You have no other skills. Like you're just like limited in what you can do. Next, like kids literally just get like abused and exploited, right? I think like a really massive example of this was like the content mother Ruby last year. It was like a very high extreme. She withheld food from her kids. She abused them. She made them like sleep outside when they didn't comply with her. She had 15 million followers. What BOP has to stand for is enabling, right? When there is a rise in popularity, more people view this content. This content is enabled by people paying her to create like even more, even if it is condemned, people still engaging with it, giving her more money, giving her more like to
on that point.
No, thank you. To like continue this. So like no access to money, right? You're like stuck living with like your parents forever because it's like no source of income. You're scared of leaving because of the emotional harms. You just like have no other knowledge and skills. Also, popularity just makes it hard to live a normal life, right? I'll take a PO1 now.
Yeah, on our side of the house, when parents post that kind of harmful content online, it's far more likely that the internet imposes some form of accountability leading to like legal action. On your side of the house, why would that just not occur like behind the curtain of like the internet?
Great, so I actually told you in framing, the counterfactual isn't you just post the content and no one engages it. It's that you have a financial incentive to make content. You just don't make the content because no one's watching it. You're not gonna pump out 6 TikToks a day if no one's watching the TikToks, right? I think that's like, this barely happened, right? Okay, so then on like spreading good parenting, I think the context here, right? Like people watch these videos, like the type of audience is parents. I think that like this content isn't effective and it like harms the parents following, right? 4 mechanisms here. Firstly, the videos are just severely cut and edited. Like they're like smooth, they don't always show the challenges. This makes it look easy. Even when there are challenges, they're often scripted or cut to resolve it quicker. You just feel stupid as a parent. You just feel like you don't know how to handle your kids like everyone on social media does. Secondly, these people are rich. They have money, they have sponsors, they're able to afford life living on Instagram, right? It's not realistic. This isn't a fair comparison as you as a parent. Third, inspiration, right? People just make their own videos, fall down the same vicious cycle, more kids are exploited. Fourthly, often just ideologically driven, right? It's like trad-wise, people like perpetrate a specific, like potentially untrue message, right? You just like spend money on like random organic food, or on the extreme, you buy into these like all natural life parents, these crunchy mum movement, right? I think that like now you just don't vaccinate your kids or buy into modern medicine or schooling. That's really terrible. I think the outcome of this, outcomes of this, like kids see videos, feel like their lives are worse. I also think that parents just learn unhealthy techniques from videos. At the end of this, I am so proud to stand.
Hi, do you mind, before we go to the first negating speaker, I just wanted to quickly check on the video.
Yes, we've had audio.
It's not working. Here we
Not
go.
sure, it's like a frozen screen.
Yeah.
Audio
Like you can
is
see it's frozen there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. There.
No worries. Thanks for letting me know. Here we go.
I think we have to make sure it's really working. We have to make it pictures. I think it's
It's a bit delayed, it's like 30 seconds delayed. But doesn't it?
Yeah, there we
Slide
are.
down.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thank the first affirming speaker for their speech, and I invite the first negating speaker to stand and deliver their speech.
I find it quite ironic how a large proportion of their case started with the spread of misinformation online, considering they quite literally spread misinformation in their point. Saber Norris did not quit surfing because she wanted to become an influencer. She's terminally ill. She literally cannot surf because she has an illness, yet they would love to spread the misinformation about her wanting to start influencing because it's so, appealing to become an influencer. So this deducts how they can actually spread misinformation through word of mouth, and is not purely exclusive to the online content as they have unfairly characterized. They said also that parenting influencing is parental content. We would like to actually cut this at the root. This is not the case. Family channels that they characterized are not parenting. Channels such as Norris Nuts isn't parenting content. They're not posting parental hacks. Their last to leave the pool gets $1,000 isn't sharing helpful parenting information about actually raising your child. That is simply just putting your kid in front of a screen. And so all of the harm they characterized with regards to that information is completely null and void in this debate. So we'll get on to my first point about how we actually create more encouraged and informed parents, and secondly, how we get more how we keep influencer parents accountable. So what does parental influencing look like? One, it looks like informative content that is sharing tips and experiences, i.e. healthy foods to pack your kid for lunch. Secondly, it's like sharing highs and lows of parenting. This looks like a day in the life of a parent. So showing the highs and lows, and not just the joys, but the moments of struggle where you don't necessarily have a solution. Note that parental content surrounds the concept of parenting, the act of taking care of a kid. Although the child may feature, the content is directed towards the lifestyle of a parent and not necessarily just the kid. So why is that? For a few reasons. One, the parents want to actually protect their child. They understand the harms of social media and putting your kid and exposing your experiences online. They have that paternal instinct to protect and share and keep to themselves some of the stuff that is innately important to them and the special moments. I find it quite ironic to think that we're suddenly living in Big Brother, where a camera is just constantly pointing at the family at all periods of their life. There are going to be moments that are intimate, that are shared just with the parent and the kid. Secondly, the internet holds people to a high level of accountability, especially in these forms of content. This looks like internet calling you out for oversharing. We see this all the time. Because a wide range of people are on the internet, although there may be a minority of weird people, the majority of people agree with child safety. Three, parents want to actually protect these intimate moments, as I shared before. When your child learns to talk, they may post a vlog about how important that was to them. However, but you want to keep that initial moment for yourself. So, what does their world look like? What is the alternative to sharing your experiences online? We think that this is discussing with your friends and family. Note that we do not think this is very effective because they validate you unconditionally. This looks like a preppy, would-be influencer mom has a social circle quite similar to herself. So when she talks about spoiling her kids, her friends don't point out that you shouldn't do that and it's not good parenting. Yeah. Instead, they do not, and that not to give your iPad, give an iPad to your kid when he's having a tantrum. Instead, they validate her and say, oh yes, this is the right way to do it, because that's the way that they know how to do it. You're getting no new ideas about parenting because you're stuck in those same social circles. This means that the parent receives unconditional validation and isn't held accountable as they are on our side of the debate. So note that they miss out on this accountability on the internet. So what is the alternative? What is alternatively consumed? One, word of mouth. This looks like wives' tales, rumors, misinformation that they quite literally spread on their side of the debate. We think that it is either equally harmful or more harmful to have misinformation spread across word of mouth because they find it more convincing. If they have multiple parents online telling you the same thing, then we think that it has obviously come to a consensus that that is something good. However, because it's come from your friends and family, you immediately respect them, you connect to them, you feel like, oh yes, I agree with what they're saying. You're not going to fact check them because it's come from word of mouth. However, because you were cautious about what you hear on the internet, you're going to fact check. You're going to actually understand whether or not this is true information. Instead, they ultimately accept all the information that comes from word of mouth on their side of the debate. Secondly, they're too scared to ask for help. They don't want to admit, when they're wrong, and they go do it alone in silence. We win this debate today if we create better parents. So why do parents watch this content? One, information. They want questions, answers. This looks like tips and tricks. They want to diversify their parental knowledge. Two, because it's unconditional. It's free from judgment, and seeing a parent under a lot of pressure, they want to appear strong for your child and in control. So they don't always have the answers, which we need to accept. Parents don't always have the answers. They're not always the all-knowing and all-assuming parents that their kids think them to be. So it can be embarrassing to ask for help. So how does this help them? One, it's encouraging. Being a parent is something daunting. The highs let them know that it's not always going to be doom and gloom, and the lows let them know that they can persevere. And we actually normalize canon events. This looks like a kid biting the furniture. Instead of going, oh my god, is my kid wrong? Has he got something wrong with him? Instead, by watching a video online and saying, oh yeah, he's just purely going through teething, we can actually share that content that they haven't experienced yet because they've not had a child. How are they going to understand how to deal with these canon events if they have no prior experience? Trial and error? Are they going to send this kid to a doctor? Some parents don't have the money to afford to go to a doctor. How are these, by having such simple form content that is ultimately free, they can get the answers to these questions immediately and also have the fact check as we would have on our side. And secondly, they get people's experiences. This looks like they're more prepared for the future and better equipped. So this looks like sending a kid to school. That is something that is a canon event on our side of the debate. They are this is something that parents aren't always equipped for. However, on our side of the debate, we can actually get information in a comfortable manner that actually parents will be able to agree with. Thirdly, the algorithm gets parents content that actually applies to them. This looks like a poor single mom who gets content that actually day in the life of a single mom on a budget. They can actually get information that helps and also applies, so they can get information such as cheap, healthy meals to send your kid to school with. Why is this important? Parents feel supported. This looks like mental health. Seeing others going through what you're going through, you have brought life into this world. You don't want what's good for it. You want what's best for it. You think that is an unreal pressure on parents. If you feel like you have to go to somebody else, you feel like you're failing your kid. However, on our side, there is no guilt. There is no shame. You can go online and see another parent going through the struggles that you are going through, and you can say, wow, I need to, I can actually be with somebody else. I'll accept this POI this last time.
Is it not easier, instead of spending 3 hours scrolling through TikTok to come across a video, is it not easier to just Google if it's normal for your kid to bite the furniture?
As we've said, short form content, you can often get this subconsciously. So just while you are scrolling throughout this stuff, if you get it from information that it is equal number of time, you can scroll through a different number of sites to get the same and to get different information each time. It's the same with Reels. This is symmetrical on both sides of the debate. So there's high quality parenting. It is comparative. On app, they are more likely to feel like they are losing as a parent. However, on our side, we have better mental health. We have a better relationship with this child. It means better skills. It means a better care for this child. Ultimately, all the positives of having that no shame, no losses on our side of the debate is ultimately preferable. And so, what kind of parents make this content? What looks like influencers, wealthy or poor? It's more informative content. Secondly, parents are sharing their struggles and actually asking for help. Ultimately, we think that the internet has high standards and high levels of accountability, and parents sharing their opinions online will actually help you. Ultimately, we think that our side of the debate, we get less shame and less stigma around parenting, and we also get more informed and better educated parents, which ultimately is the highest level of importance because that trickles down to your kids. Thank you very much.
I thank the first negating speaker for their speech, and I invite the second affirming speaker to stand and deliver their speech.
Negating tells you about poor single mothers being able to get parenting advice from millionaires getting sponsored to create parenting content. What am I going to do in my speech? Firstly, on framing, how does it affect kids, and what does this teach parents? Okay, what do they tell you about framing? They tell you that like the family channel is like not parenting, and parenting channels is like only sharing helpful info, and that most of the time the kid doesn't feature at all. Okay, like look, firstly, I think you actually have to feature the child in these videos, like A, for it to be like parenting content, so you can show how like good you are as a parent, like look how well behaved my child is. Secondly, I think showing the child is just like more engaging. You probably just show up on algorithm more this way. And like, but then like even if you take them at their best case, and it's like only your parenting, right? I still think that you still are just like a bad parent because now you're just spending all your time filming yourself, talking about your child, and like not paying attention to the child. Okay, what am I going to talk about next? Okay, they tell you about how we tell you about how the rise like allows enabling, right? These videos become popular. There are more of them. There are these channels with like over 15 million, right? I think it's very unstrategic of them to not respond to this. I think it makes all our harms about how the kids of these influencers are just treated so much worse. I think they need to do a lot of work at this second need for them to be able to like even make up this ground. Okay, then what do they tell you? They tell you the counterfactual is that your friends like validate your parenting styles, and they tell you this is actually a really, really bad thing because your friends are just like monkeys and parrot back what you said. Okay, firstly, I think there's a lot of sources you get parenting advice from. I think you get it from your instinct. I think you get it from your past background. Like, you know, your dad like did some stuff and you like want to be a better dad than your dad was, right? I think you probably get it from your friends. I also think you get it from like reading books, hearing like interviews, right? Even just media, pop culture, you see parents in movies, right? And also the ironicness of them trying to claim echo chambers on their side when literally they're just going through TikTok and looking at parenting content is insane, right? I think you get significantly more echo chambers on their side, but there's more, right? They tell you that you get misinformation from your friends. I think this is actually really inaccurate, right? They tell you in the PI response that TikTok like goes through your subconscious. I think this means that actually knifes their case because if it's in your subconscious, there's no way you're like going to Google after to fact check, right? It's just sitting away in your brain going, oh, this is a good idea, right? I think if your friend tells you something like, oh, eating healthy food is good, you probably check up on that after, right? Because it's like people, you question like your friends, right? They also tell you that they tell you about how parents, the lifestyle of the parent influence. They tell you two things about this. These aren't true. Okay, firstly, they tell you that the parent like wants to protect the kid. I think firstly, the fact they film their kid in the first place probably means they're like predisposed to just like think social media is a good thing. I think this means that they don't in fact like the parent themselves just like probably doesn't really think that filming their child and like putting it on social media is a bad thing because I think that like they've just done that, right? They obviously think it's good. And secondly, I think even if they start out with the most pure, honest like intentions, they just love their kid all the way, we take them in the very best case, I think you just get corrupted by money anyway. Why? Because they think money is good, right? We tell you this. We tell you there's a slippery slope, right? If you make, if your video goes viral and you get some money, you're like, oh, now I can like treat my kid, right? You go out, you buy them like some ice cream, right? Now you try and make more viral videos so that you can like make your kid happier. Okay, then what do they tell you? They tell you an attempt to like mitigate our 7 mechanisms that the internet in fact really loves kids. Firstly, there's a huge like thing about like sexualizing young women and like kids in these videos, but like so I think that is very dangerous, right? And secondly, even if I think you just can't tell because these videos are so carefully edited. They're cut, they're only showing like the best moments, they're showing the parents in the best slides. And even if you're on like the other side of the world, like I don't think you can literally do anything about it. I don't think the internet can protect these vulnerable kids at all. Okay then, what about the kids? We tell you 7 mechanisms about why this really, really hurts the kids under their parents when the internet when the rise of internet parenting means that parents have to spend, like, these influencers have to, like, create quantity of videos. We tell you they have to make them interesting and unique. We tell you how this leads to, like, these 7, like, exploitation reasons. I think the only response they give you is that they get caught under their side. I think 3 responses here. Firstly, it would never happen if these videos were not popular. There is no incentive to go and make videos and exploit your kids so they, like, cry more or, like, smile bigger when you're not popular, when these videos aren't getting money, right? When it's just not a viable path for, like, a career, you just never take it. When the rise never happens, this never happens. Secondly, we tell you about the engagement in these videos means that, like, even more horrific things happen. We tell you about the example of Ruby, who had, like, 1 million followers. We also tell you about how, like, this, in the worst case, right, you are treating your kid as a business operation. This is how you make your money, right? On the lower end of the scale, this just means you, like, get angry when the kid doesn't respond in a way, when, like, you're not making the viral videos because the kid doesn't really want to do it, right? At the higher end, this actually looks like abuse. You're manipulating your kid into creating content, right? This is such a huge harm on their side, right? I think every video that is made, they have to cop the lower end of harm of just, like, the parent yelling at the kid. And I think they also have to stand for the highest end cases of, like, actual abuse, right? The only other sort of response they give you is that, oh, like, even if we take them at the best case and the kid's, like, not even featured in the videos, I think you're still just a horrible parent now because you're filming yourself all day talking about how good you are at parenting your kid, right? I think all these mechanisms of quality and stuff, quantity still stands. I think now you just are so busy telling the world you're a good parent, you just forget to parent your kid. I think that's also a huge harm, right? You can't give your kid attention when they're crying because you're too busy filming a video on parenting hacks. I think that is such a huge harm. I know that kids are always going to be the most vulnerable people in this debate, right? They're just of their age. And also, like, the parents in this, like, the parent influencers of debate are making a lot of money. I don't think we care about them at right. I think Second Neg has to respond to all 7 mechanisms or they just lose this debate. Okay, what does this teach? What on their push then, what does this teach parents? They tell you about how this is so good because it's, like, unconditional and it normalizes. And okay, a couple of responses here. They tell you about the algorithm. They tell you about the algorithm, a single mother can find, like, other parenting hacks from single mothers, right? I think we tell you at Emily that these people are rich, either because they literally, look, there's a barrier to entry of, like, giving up your job and becoming an Instagram influencer here. I think you can't do this unless you are rich. It cuts out all of their relatability content, right? And even if you believe they weren't rich before, they certainly are now when they're popular, when they're coming up on your feed, and when they've got sponsors. Okay then, what else do they tell you? They tell you that, like, this is unconditional and that, like, no one's gonna judge you. Look, I think I gave you about, like, 7 different ways you can get information, like books, media, Google search, as I tell you in my POI. I think if you're really concerned about your kid biting the furniture, you don't wait 5 hours for a video of that to show up on your TikTok. I think that's quite ridiculous. But also they tell you here that the information is, like, pure and unbiased and really helpful. I think they don't respond to Emily's mechanism that we give you about, like, the ideological incentive. This looks like trad wives. This looks like people perpetrating the all natural. This looks like being a vulnerable single mother and being told that you have to go and buy organic food and, like, and you have to buy, like, breast milk, right? Because otherwise your kid is not going to grow right. I think that's actually a huge harm. You don't feel like you're succeeding as a parent because you're watching all these videos and you are not able to follow them in the same way that these millionaires can, right? You feel like you are not being a good parent because all you see is the edited, perfect lives of these kids. We win this debate, so proud to stand.
I thank the second speaker of the Affirmative team for their speech, and I invite the second speaker of the Negating team to stand and deliver their speech.
when you tell a struggling single mum that her ability to ask for help has been taken away from her because she's failing her child if she films herself and asks for help on the internet because she doesn't know how to like take care of her baby when she's teething because she just doesn't have access to that information, that's a harmful narrative for her. We like support those types of mums. So a couple of points of clash. Firstly, a bit of clarity, then on children's privacy, and then on the exploitation of viewers, which will have my substantive contribution integrated. So firstly, on clarity, we hear this big push that this looks like family channels like the Norris Nuts. Firstly, I think it's pretty self-explanatory that we're talking about parenting influences to the extent where like this is about the parenting lifestyle, so would have a major focus on the parent themselves. We told you at Jacob though that it is likely that the child features to an extent, but they're not the main idea. And secondly, this is because people absorbing this kind of content want to see the parenting content. They're not really looking for the type of like Norris Nuts content where it's focused on the child. They're looking for advice on how to parent, those like tips and tricks. They're looking for that insight. Thirdly, even if this is true, then their whole case falls out because only 5-year-olds are watching the Norris Nuts. Let's be real. People just aren't interested in watching a bunch of kids run around screaming and crying. Yeah. So then moving on to child's privacy. Look, we heard this point about like how the media just can't exist without the child. Look, I think that the reality is that there's people talking about their experiences is part of what influencers are looking like. Like parenting is more than just a kid's reaction and like that being edited into a video. We think it looks like dealing with stress as a parent and how you can like cope with that and sharing that with other people or asking for help if you need it. I don't think that the content is necessarily like dependent on the child being a part of that. So then on parents becoming like corrupt by this money, look, if parents do lack all of their parental instinct to like protect their kid online, why would they like be normal? Why would there be normal good parents offline and on their side of the house? Like we think if people are really just gonna like become corrupt by money as opposed to like the love for their child, then on their side of the house they would have the same harms of like parents just abusing their child because they wouldn't care about it either, or just like neglecting it because they like want to go make money at work. Like the same incentive still applies here because they would just like spend all their time at the office instead of looking after their child. And look, like, yeah, this just applies to other forms of exploitation, like forcing kids into like different like performative like activities, like making your kid do dance and like overprotecting them and like being a soccer mom. So then on like how they would like film their child like grieving over their dead dog. Look, I think if this is the reality we live in, then like I don't really want to be a part of that world, because I think that like most mothers and fathers like have some level of care for their child and would instead like give their child a hug when their dog is dying. But like I think the reality is that secondly, we do have that level of accountability that Jacob did tell you about at first, whereby the internet is probably aware that when a child is crying, that's not something that a mother should just stop and film. They're probably going to call you out and be like, bro, go hug your child, stop just filming this and posting it on the internet, we don't want to watch this. But then we heard like that in that case they would just film nothing and like neglect their child because they just make it all about themselves if they don't make it about the child. Well, look, I just think this is like the same incentive again applies to like your job. Like you're not neglecting your child just because you're going to work. Right, like we don't call like mothers who also work at the same time neglecting their child. Like just because you take a bit of time to film yourself talking about your issues, I think that's really important. Yeah. Look, and again, on this like idea of like forcing like the children to change their lifestyle, like Saber quitting surfing, again, I think Jacob responded to this example pretty sufficiently. But then in terms of like people not going to school and being homeschooled, like Big Justice doesn't not go to school because his parents say he can't. He doesn't go to school because like he chose to like have that career. It's not like a parenting influencer case. This applies to like those family narratives, which are like symmetric to both sides. So then on sexualization, which I think is where a lot of their larger impacts lie, and where I think we can quite easily cut their case down. Firstly, we have internet accountability, like for example, that like internet family who the mother was like making the kids wear crop tops or like not letting them eat. They got like extreme legal action against them. There were like extreme like GoFundMe accounts put towards helping fund their legal case. Like I just don't think the reality is that the internet supports that. But secondly, people just don't interact with that kind of content. Like even if there is a minority that are like pedophiles and like really want to see that, that's like symmetrical. That's a psychological issue. They just go and look at that harmful content somewhere else. Like I don't don't think that they can like give us that harmful burden. But yeah, I think this is a really minority case, and like the content does just get taken down or criticized. But thirdly, we think that this is far worse on Av. Like as I got at, in my POI, I think that this harms just don't get seen. Like these parents are clearly bad and twisted if they think that they can like give their children EDs so they can make money. So on their side, even if there isn't social media to like perpetuate that harmful behavior, they would still have some sort of bad characterization. Like maybe they are abusive or they're overprotective and like force them into like dance or gymnastics and like give them EDs that way. So I think that, but it's worse on their side because on their side it happens behind the scenes. Like so even if it does happen on our side, at least on our side we're like a little bit more likely to expose that behavior and hold those parents a bit more accountable. On their side there's no level of accountability. I think it's far worse when it happens behind the scenes. So then on the exploitation of viewers. Firstly, so we hear this like push about like the alternatives to books, media, friends, and like how they're better. Firstly, they're inaccessible. Like not everyone just has access to like the poor single mum doesn't always have access or time to like go to her local library. Secondly, they can be highly intimidating. It's really hard as a parent to like admit that you need help. That's like a huge harm that they have to cop on their side of the house because it's so easy to just go online and like look for an answer to like how to like change a diaper, which I think most mums know, but like maybe there's other like more nuanced things that they're going to get. Thirdly, it's just not engaging because it's not coming from someone who's related to their experiences. When you hear a single mum tell you, or when you hear another mum tell you about like the pain of childbirth and what you suffer afterwards, it's more normalized. They feel like you sympathize with you better. That's more relatable. Fourthly, even if these things are good as symmetrical, people can still like go and like talk to their friends. So then on like glorifying parents' lifestyle and how it would be like only wealthy people. No, we think the content is diverse. Why is this? Firstly, because influencers want to share their struggles, like this looks like day in the lives. But even if this isn't true, then secondly, the rich influencers have like a money incentive to share the struggles because that's what does get clicks. I'll take a POI really quickly. Okay, never mind. Thirdly, the algorithm gives you like applicable influences. This looks like if you are a single mum going through struggles, they're going to give you like content based on struggles. I don't think it's realistic that people are engaging with those like rich people if it doesn't relate to them. So then on this big push about like trad wives being glorified. Firstly, just so what? Like parents have the right to share their lifestyle online. Why is this? A, because social media applies to everyone. Like if we're gonna let Andrew Tate spread like alpha male content online, why can a single mother or like a trad wife not share her lifestyle and her struggles or like share her experiences? So then B, this like especially applies to the situation where they do need help or validation. I think these people are in sufficient need where like they do have that principal right to be online and sharing their experiences. Secondly, I don't think these people are inherently bad. Like trad wives literally commit their entire lives to loving their family. Like even if there is some toxicity, I think as a whole, and the ones that do get interacted with online are going to be like the wholesome kind. So why do people, even if this is true, why do the viewers have common sense? Firstly, they have parental instinct. They know directly what is good or bad for their specific child. And secondly, they don't have an unrealistic trust in the internet. Note that there's like a big cultural buy-in to like the internet having harms. Very, very hard to negate.
I thank the second negating speaker for their speech, and I invite the third affirming speaker to stand and deliver their speech.
Ollie tells you in his speech that he does not want to live in a world where somebody can take a video of their child grieving their dead dog and post it online. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the world that we live in right now. One side of this debate is telling you that we should change it, and the other side of the debate says that it is perfectly fine. 5 big booms for Ath in this debate, right? Three things to do in my speech. Firstly, a lot of framing here, right? Secondly, some stuff about the kids themselves, and lastly, some stuff about the parents, right? So on framing, like, note that if you buy our framing, like, even to like a mediocre extent, I think we just automatically win the debate because we give you 6 mechs at Emily as to how kids are like permanently, tangibly, and severely exploited by big family channels like the Costco guys, and we just like do not hear any response to that, right? So what kind of channels? Like, this is the main part of the framing, right? We hear from Neg that the only channels this includes are the ones that are like informative and helpful, and they never put their kids on camera because parent incentives mean like they're too smart to do that, right? So first point here, like, why should the kids have to be in it? I feel like this just makes sense in order for you as an influencer to get traction, right? Like, if the only visual in your video about parenting is just like sort of you standing there talking or like a black screen with words on it, that's not going to be very engaging to parents. You're probably not going to get a lot of traction, right? I feel like that means Neg just doesn't get any benefits because nobody watches your thing, right? Comparatively, I feel like we tell you why people are really, really incentivized to have their kids in their videos because it's an emotive thing. But why do our examples still fit Neg's definition? Because all of the channels that we bring up, especially in Emily's speech, still do videos like Neg is purporting. That video where the dog dies, right? That is still called how to deal with a child dealing with grief, right? Even if you buy Neg's like definition they give to you as to what counts as a parental piece of content, that you are giving tips and tricks on how to deal with your child going through certain situations, canon events like Miles Morales over there tells you, right? I think the point is these channels still make these kinds of videos and are still parental influencers in either world, right? Note, I think if you buy both of these framings to a large extent, like ours are just so much more popular. If both of these types of channels exist in this debate, the ones where you are, you know, sort of more corporatizing your kids are more popular. I think that means they make more videos. I think more channels are like this than like that. I think more kids live in this world than Neg's world. I think that means numerically we just win the debate off of that as well. I think parental incentives work for us here. It's not responded to from Emily as to why parents don't legitimize this corporatization of their kids in their own head. We tell you why they think that they're supporting their kids' future, supporting their college fund, all of this. We think it's for the best. The only kind of response we hear is that like, well, in that case, why don't parents just like go to the office and never see their kids? 2 reasons. Firstly, when you're working with your kids, when that's your job, you're there, right? You see them all the time. That's very, very different from being in the office far away. Secondly, being at the office, your work at the office, whether or not you get a promotion, does not depend on whether or not you let your kids do what they want, whether or not you let them go surfing. No, I think if you're going to get cancer, you get cancer in either world, right? Okay, so lastly, I think even if you buy all of Neg's framing part, our unresponded mechs like still stand, and they're so crucial in this debate, right? So then let's talk about kids. I think this is like the most important part of the debate by far, right? Our path to victory here is pretty clear. Prove that kids are exploited to some degree. Know that I think kids are exploited in either world, no matter which framing you buy. I think this is a super low burden mechanistically, because if even like a couple thousand kids are permanently scarred for life, that means they can't hold normal social interactions. That means their emotional coping mechanisms are down the drain. I think we win this debate by far. So let's talk about the calling out of abuse here, right? So I think firstly, a lot of this stuff that these parents are doing that is abusive is not necessarily illegal, right? Like, it is not necessarily illegal to just like say mean things to your child, right? I don't think this means that you make videos about this and the police come and swat you and put you in prison for being mean to your child, right? Like, I think secondly, even if you don't buy that, then we tell you why social media means more abuse, right? And I keep bringing up this example of this like influencer mom who was like, abusing her kids, and then the internet called her out. That abuse does not happen if she's not on the internet in the first place, right? The reason why she wants her kids to be in crop tops all the time is so that they get more views. We tell you mechanisms as to why this is true. We tell you why sexualization is so rampant on the internet. More on that later on, right? The accountability here, again, like, even if you do get the internet being mad at these people, which we don't think is true, I think parents can just like block the comments, or you just turn the comments off. You don't listen, right? I feel like generally when you tell people in your everyday life that they are bad parents, they're really, really inclined to not listen to you because it's a big insult to them and their identity, right? So I think we prove a massive scale here. I think at the very, very lowest impact this works in either world. Even if your whole livelihood is telling people tips about how to raise your kid, that inherently influences how you think about your kid. You are thinking about your kid as if they are a thing a monetary thing, right? They help you make a living. I think this means you still make those harmful decisions we tell you about at first. You still make those decisions that aren't in the best interest of your kid and are in the best interest of you making money. At the highest impact, this is quite heavily mapped out, and it's really, really weighed highly. Why? Permanent, right? In any case where these children face anything close to the abuse that we tell you about, this is permanent, scarring, tangible, and severe. It probably ruins these kids' lives permanently, right? Our stuff, a Big Justice is not mature enough to make these decisions for himself, okay? I don't care if he thinks he doesn't want to go to school. His parents put him in that position, and that is scarring for his life, right? So on parents, this is Neg's big path to victory. They really have to prove parents are better off to us, right? Which I don't think they do exclusively. And they have to prove to us how that leads down to effect on the kids. Not we weigh to you so highly why kids are the most vulnerable actor here, right? So a few things here. Firstly, their main idea about parents having unconditional support. And this whole thing like a single mother should have the right to like go on the internet and ask questions and things. Firstly, this assumes no other support, right? This assumes that like every single mother in the world has like no parents, no friends who have kids, none of this, right? Like my mum raised me as a single mother. There were plenty of support networks there. The point is this exists for most people in this debate. Secondly, I think these people just don't count as influencers, judging from Neg's own decision, right? In the framing, these people are not like sharing tips and tricks about how to parent. They are just like asking questions. In the case that you make one-off TikTok video asking a question, I don't think you become an influencer, right? So immediately, again, if you're like struggling to admit help, why won't you just Google it? We give you this really good response at Beth, is you can just like read a book, and we don't hear enough responses to why this is like really, really intangible just because you're a single mother. Apparently you can't read, right? And so I think this, there's like, we hear that this abuse is symmetrical, right? And that the stuff is taken down, no one's like, I think it's social media, right? Millions of people are like this. You can't assume that no one on social media is pedophilic, right? You can't assume that like nobody on social media is going to be making these like questionable comments about your daughter that she's dressed up in these skimpy clothes for like views, right? This is just a fact of the debate. The internet has billions of people on it. A lot of them are like this, right? So then obviously I think the effects on the parents are less important here. Why? I think at Neg Block, they really have to argue to why they are the most important people in the debate, and why these people like being a bit more sure of what to do on the first day of school outweighs kids, thousands of them, being like horrendously scarred for the rest of their life, right? I think we can all agree that in the film The Truman Show, the guys running the show are the villains, right? This stands throughout the course of our debate. If you buy that the Costco guys are a family channel, we simply win. Right? We simply win this debate. In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you.
I thank the third affirmative speaker for their speech, and I invite the third negating speaker to stand and deliver their speech.
The affirming team wants you to believe that parenting influencers and parenting influencing channels are the channels with scripted challenge videos where they show their kids crying when they don't win the competition against their siblings, or videos where children are clearly being exploited for their parents to make money. We have told you so many times and walked you through how parenting influencers are parents that yes, obviously have some content like that show their kids, but like use their platform to spread awareness about the like highs and lows of parenting, things people struggle with, ways like how to like get help as a parent when you're struggling, etc. Things like that are the real like things what parent influencers are. I don't remember the last time I saw the non-stats giving parenting advice or giving like just simply their experience on being a parent. So I fail to see how any of those channels fall into this debate. I'm going to go through 2 clash points: the effect on the kids, which is arguably like the most important part of this debate, and then the parents, which, as we've already characterized, trickles down to the kids. About how their main push is parents will exploit the kids, etc. I already talked about how we're mainly focused on parenting channels, which I do think it's unlikely that the extremes of this will be anywhere close to what these family channels are doing. But if we look at what the incentives of a lot of these influencers are on that they're saying will exploit their kids. If they're an exploitative parent, their incentives like attention, money, etc., and whether they can market their kid off that. But if you take away this platform, do those incentives of that those clearly sort of messed up morals you have as a parent, are those going to go away? No, they're not. For one, I think it's unlikely to believe that if there wasn't a rise in parenting influencing, there will be then no child content online. I think that's completely unrealistic. So I think all of their harms of parents exploiting their kids, showing them crying or doing all of that stuff, I think those harms exist on both sides, because just because there's no rise in parenting influencing doesn't mean there's suddenly no child content online. A lot of these a lot of this content they're talking about, it's not parent content, it's child influencing content, which would obviously still exist on both sides. To expand on what Ollie said about parents being exploited offline as well, even if you don't believe that there would still be child influencing content online, there would, if you look, there's competitive dance, look at things like Dance Moms, etc., that kind of thing. Yes, obviously that was a televised show, but that kind of thing happens untelevised as well. Like you said, there's eating disorders that come about so easily with this kind of exploitative behavior in these performative areas. And on their side of the debate, when you have these parents that just have all these messed up morals and no one holding them to account, what was not responded to enough significantly was the fact that their support systems around them are likely going to have at least similar ideals. If you're your whole friend group, as a mum, you're not gonna all have completely different parenting styles. If you go to them and be yeah, I'm making my kid train 10 hours a day to do gymnastics, the parents that you've been friends with for ages and have raised your kids together aren't gonna be oh, maybe don't do that because your 5-year-old probably doesn't enjoy doing 5 hours of conditioning a day. No, they're gonna validate you and be yeah, that's gonna discipline your kid and make them more determined to work towards goals. You don't have the same accountability that you get if you do have a parent posting that kind of content online. At the end of the day, what's going to come up better for a kid whose parent is then just enabled to just continue this, as I want to characterize it, as abuse, continue this abuse throughout their childhood, because there's no sort of accountability online. Even if that exploitative parent isn't the kind of parent that's going to be doing parenting influencing, you still see if you see another parenting influencer doing that sort of thing, and that everyone's hey, maybe don't do that because your kid looks miserable, then they still have that accountability, oh, that parent's the same as me, but everyone's saying they're doing something wrong, maybe I should rethink my actions. And I think that has to be taken highly, not just the accountability that the actual influence can get, but the self-accountability people can gain from just simply looking at these other people being held accountable. I'll take it for you right now.
When these videos are so highly edited, how will you ever know that the child is miserable?
I think that that kind of contradicts the affirming side's case, as they talked about how parents want to show their kids crying. And I think there's a whole idea of look how disciplined my kid is. They didn't want to get up and do that gymnastics competition, but they did it anyway because I'm such a good parent and I discipline them. And then the people in the comment, people that just take in content online aren't stupid. They're not going to take everything they see as true. I think there's a large degree of people, pretty much everyone knows not everything online is true, and that just opens up discussions in the comments, should this kind of thing be happening to the kids? Yeah, I'll take it to you.
Does a discussion in the comment section have any real power over what happens to the parent and the child?
I think it does have real power. As you said, if you want to characterize these parents as only being after money and fame, if everyone is then hating on you and being oh, no one wants their content anymore because they're abusing their kid, they're not going to want that, are they? It's going to give them so many more incentives to treat their kid better. At the end of the day, even if you don't want to believe that those influencers are going to start treating their kid better, I think there has not been enough response to the fact that the self-accountability that others can gain from this. And I think that a large part of this debate has been focused on the extreme of all these parent influencers, they're all exploiting their kids, but they've failed to talk about the majority of influencers that don't have as big as followings but help so many more people with this good advice. Obviously people are going to talk more about the parents that are exploiting their kids instead of the parent that's helping other parents who are really stressed or don't know what's like normal for their kid to be doing at what age. That has not been talked about really at all in this debate, and I think this is massive because this is the thing that's mainly comes from parenting influencing. Obviously the main thing that's going to be talked about like in terms of it is going to be the bad stuff, but there's so much good stuff that comes from it, which I'll get into more with the effects on parents, and I'll take a few after.
Yeah, as a social media influencer, would you say that you have an incentive to become one of those most popular ones?
I'd say that as a parenting influencer, you have an incentive to educate and help those struggling with similar things that you've struggled with in the past. I think that's a difference between the child influencers whose parents are just like managing their behind the scenes trying to make them famous, and a parenting influencer that's trying to help out people facing similar things. They talked about how parents have like other support systems, and like single struggling moms can get help through other forms of research, like getting to like read a book. I think this is like completely unfair to the single struggling mom, because as a mom, say you go read a book written by some man about like what's normal to feel after you've just given birth, what's going to be more helpful and validate your feelings more, that like random man or that doctor you're talking to saying all like the pain and like mental struggle you're going through is completely normal, or like a woman online who's been through the same thing saying it's normal, but here are the things you can do to help, because you know what, it does suck. That's just going to validate that what that like parent is feeling, and that effect has not been talked enough about in this debate. Because at the end of the day, if a parent's feeling stressed and then they go to a doctor and they're like, oh, that stress is completely normal, it's fine, everyone like deals with it, then that parent's not going to feel validated. Instead they're just going to be like, oh, I just need to deal with this better because everyone else is supposedly dealing with it better as well. Obviously the stress is going to take a toll on their mental health, which obviously isn't going to be good for the child if you now got this super stressed parent that doesn't know what they're doing. At the end of the day, like if all the parenting you're getting is from like the people around you, it's not only going to like perpetuate like it's cycles of bad parenting potentially if you have been raised in like a not very good place, but you're also just not being able to experience the other kind of parenting that is available to you, and that therefore that's obviously not like at the end of the day the most important actor in this debate is the kids that are the ones being affected by this. So if you have a parent that all they've ever known is the way they've been raised, which may not have been very good, or like the way that their friends are raising their kids, or you have a parent that can obviously have their natural parental instincts online, not just take everything online as like, oh, I should raise my kid this way because this influencer told me to. You instead have a parent that can be like, what's best for my kid? What's this person doing? What works? What are the people in the comments maybe responding to that? Like, is what this parent is doing online good? And then you have this parent that can make so many more informed decisions because of just the more information that's out there that's presented to them in a more relatable manner.
I thank the negation speaker for their speech, and as is customary, I will now reverse the speaking order, and I invite the negation reply speaker to stand and deliver their speech.
Let's take F at their absolute best, where people consume terrible content on a regular basis, and even if the algorithm only gives you a few how to have a healthy lunch on a budget as a mum, the scale of the internet makes this impact huge. There are millions, billions of people absorbing this content. That means at the very least on our side of the house, tens of thousands of mums at least absorb a minor amount of this content. That means tens of thousands of kids have a slightly healthier lunch on a budget. That means tens of thousands of mums feel a little bit more validated. This means that even at our absolute worst, our most terrible benefits outweigh any benefit that they can claim of maybe 1,000 influencer kids being terribly exploited. But I'll tell you why that's not true. We tell you a couple of things that I think prove that we can achieve our best case. Firstly, that influencer parents do share good content and that people see it more often because a couple reasons. Firstly, that it is focused on the parent because A, it's parenting content, that's what they're like creating. B, they want to appeal to the viewer base, like these people are looking for parenting content. And C, at the very worst here, it's irrelevant on either side because only 5-year-olds are watching the Costco guys. A parent is not just absorbing that content. And then secondly, there's an incentive to be good. Like there are tips and like these tips and tricks and highs and lows are what gets the juicy content. That's what gets the clicks. So even if they don't really care about the child, which I think they do, like reasonably parents do care about their kid, but like even if they don't, that's where the clicks are if they do have that profit incentive. But thirdly, viewers do get this content on their algorithm. So this means even if the content is bad sometimes, that like they get the applicable content that they can easily inherit into their lives. That means that like a kid is more likely to get better care because the algorithm gives them content that they can easily distribute into their parenting, and they get content that helps them, that validates their needs as a parent. No, we gave you like a lot of impacting down the line on why parents do significantly struggle to ask for help and why it is like so high impact, because like they are quite vulnerable to like feeling guilty, and we told you a lot about how that passes on to the child. I think if we win this point about the good content and getting actually consumed, even if it's only a marginal increase, that's a marginal amount of kids who like have a better quality of life. But secondly, we tell you that even if the content is bad, that viewers do have a level of common sense. We gave you like all of these mechanisms around parental instinct and like critical thinking, especially in terms of the internet. Like it's very vastly known that like false information is spread on the internet. I think especially when it applies to your child, you're going to be more critical when you look at this. We heard no responses to this. If they want to claim we didn't respond to all 9 of their mechanisms, which I think we did, I just grouped them in my second reply, and I think Pearl gave you a lot of responses. But I think that even if we didn't, then like they didn't respond to our stuff. But if not, I think the algorithm does give them good content that applies to them. So even if you don't believe they have critical thinking, we still think it's principally wrong to weigh this over like the influencer's right to share their struggles as a parent and their right to ask for help. And we think that there are like symmetrical alternatives. If they claim the benefits of reading, then so we can have reading on our side as well. We think that as a whole, this is still better than the alternative of like getting stuck in an echo chamber of like what your parents taught you and like what your friends like validate for you. Thirdly, we told you that the exploitation of children is significantly worse on F. We had 0 response to this. Like, firstly, we told you that alternatives do exist. So even if these people who are clearly like mentally ill, if you're giving your child an ED, they're just gonna like become extreme sports mums and like force them into like gymnastics. So at the very least, this is symmetric. But we told you secondly, they take this to a far more extreme extent when they don't have any level of accountability. I think accountability is where we do win on this debate. Like we heard basically no responses. I don't think that there's any symmetrical benefit that they can claim. So as a whole, I think we get more informed parents and more validated parents. That means better quality of life for the child. They get more exploitation on their side. Very, very proud to negate it.
I thank the negation reply speaker for their speech, and I now invite the affirming reply speaker to stand and deliver the last speech of the debate.
Look, I think that healthy recipes exist on the internet without the rise of parenting influences. I think that none of their benefits are mutually exclusive. We can claim like a lot of all this on our side of the house, right? Because Google, the internet still exists, but we just don't have this exploitative industry. Even if you only believe it's exploitative like 1/8 of the time, that's still 1/8 of the time more that we just win the debate. Okay, a couple things to do in this reply. So it's like firstly it's some notes on framing and then some general comparison of how everything like applies to each other in the debate. So very quickly on framing, right? From the beginning, we told you about the metrics of social media, about clickbait, about like being entertaining and interesting, about being engaging. They didn't contest this, right? If their videos aren't engaging, if they're just videos of a parent, just like text on a blank screen, like people just don't watch them that much. Like, even if they were interesting to single mothers, the videos just don't get picked up by the algorithm. They're just not recommended to them at the same degree because they're not engaging, they're not clickbaitable, they're not interesting, right? We told you about like millions and millions of videos going through social media every single day. They must be something about the algorithm. What this means for the debate, they just can't claim a wide span of benefits from viewership and engagement because a lot of it just doesn't happen in this debate. Okay, then really quickly, like, what is an influencer, right? I think I have a TikTok account. I'm not an influencer. I don't think it's reasonable to claim that, like, being an influencer is just like posting a question asking for help, right? I think that as a parental influencer, you have to be pertaining to these limits on social media, right? Like posting 6 TikToks a day, 2 YouTube videos a week, right? I think this is fair enough. At the beginning, this wasn't contested. This came out really late. I think this still stands. So, some general comparison on like things in fitness, right? So, they tell us about like parents feeling like they're failing as a parent and like how you get a better relationship with the kid, right? We tell you that even if you're just filming yourself, like this still doesn't create it. But also, they tell us a lot about how single mothers are going to have a really, really hard time because they don't know why their kids are biting the couch or something. Look, I think we tell you that when you have a big parenting question, you can literally just Google it. Why is this better? It's more credible than an unsourced thing on social media. A TikTok does not have references, does not have sources. You're not likely to Google a TikTok because this is your entertainment time. This is the time you take to relax. You're not going to be doing a research project, right? I think like our burden is not proving that no child content and exploitation ever exists again. We simply have to prove that it is regrettable that a few thousand children are put into a situation where they are filmed in a very vulnerable moment. Note, like the example I gave you about like the child posing for the dog thumbnail, at first still stands here because that is a parental content video about how to deal with a child with grief, right? I think even if you believe maybe 50 of these videos happen like every few months, that's still such a massive harm because these kids are scarred for the rest of their lives. They have this emotional burden. They don't know how to show their emotions. They are bad at having a future career path. Everyone in school knows just like they're being exploited in their worst moments. They have no freedom. They have no autonomy. This is terrible, right? They also tell us they don't know why like crunchy mums and trad moms are harmful. It takes like right to share your struggles. We told you about buying out of things. If you believe their characterization about impressionable young single mothers, I think they just get stuck in this echo chamber. Maybe like 40 mums just don't vaccinate their child now. Just buy like food that's overly expensive. Maybe the kid gets measles, right? This is horrific. I think, look, even if you believe that family channels aren't a part of this debate, parenting influencers who do discuss their kids and film them still exist. I give you the dog example. Finally, on accountability, like, I think we told you from the start that both hateful and positive comments give you a lot of power. You get money and engagement from any comment you get on your video. You can just turn off the comments or you can just not respond to them, right? Unless you're doing something actually illegal. You literally just don't get pulled up for this, right? Because maybe people don't like you. There's like a million influencers people just don't like, right? I think that like, if you don't get arrested, which you won't, you just make more money to make more content and you literally don't care. I think that like, they tell you about gymnastics, just like, if we say the internet is really corrupting and like they just like wouldn't do this otherwise. At the end of this debate, we stand for not exploiting thousands more children. I am proud to stand.
I thank both teams for what was an excellent debate, and I invite you to cross the floor, greet each other however you like, and let's go on.
I have a real debate. Oh, that's Scottish. That is Scottish. Definitely. Oh, yeah, it is a good answer.